a little bit more interesting because they can, manage their business to make money. Gold itself, I'm really, really cautious on it.
Very interesting. Guys, thank you so much for coming in. Ben Kumar, Chris Justin from Seven Investment Management. There are so many calls, we could do hours and hours on this, but Rachel Johnson's here, so we shan't. 03456060973 to join the conversation here this evening on LBC. Thank you very much for your time tonight and this week. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player. You can also pause and rewind live radio, as well as listen to a range of podcasts. Download now for free from the App Store or head to globalplayer.com. We leave you at the end of this sunny Friday evening with this glorious message of hope.
Ladies and gentlemen, the weekend.
Coming up at 10, Nick Abbott. Next, Rachel Johnson.
Thanks, Tom, and you too. I feel very enriched by that. It's been the deadliest year in the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians since 1948. And this is one of the most dangerous moments since Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October last year. Hezbollah's campaign into the north started on the 8th of October. It's fired 9,000 rockets in 11 months. This week, over 2 days, Hezbollah has been humiliated by booby traps of devices, first pages, then walkie-talkies. Is it about to get deadlier still? Can Israel really fight a ground war on another front? Can Israel really take on Hezbollah as well as Hamas? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, LBC has been told the UK and the US could secretly give Ukraine permission to fire Western weapons into Russia in the coming weeks. It's not expected to be made public until after the first missiles have been launched. Foreign Secretary David Lammy was asked about it yesterday after a meeting with his American counterpart, Antony Blinken.
We discussed at length how we ensure that Ukraine has all it needs militarily, politically, diplomatically, and in terms of aid to get through what will be a tough winter and into 2025.
The government says its position is unchanged and that equipment provided by the UK is intended for the defence of Ukraine. The Israeli military says 10 senior Hezbollah commanders have been killed alongside its operations chief in an airstrike in Beirut. The IDF says it was carried out to protect the citizens of Israel, but it's not seeking escalation. Lebanese health officials say almost 60 others were injured and 9 were killed. Mohammed Al-Fayed has been described as a monster by alleged victims who say he sexually assaulted him. The former owner of Harrods died last year. 37 women have since come forward in what lawyers are calling one of the worst ever cases of corporate sexual exploitation. Gloria Allred is advising some of those taking action, having previously represented the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and R. Kelly.
These survivors are role models in courage. They know what happened to them. They've described it in detail, either publicly or to the barristers. This is a teaching moment for Harrods. It's a teaching moment for other corporations, frankly, all over the world.
The current bosses of Harrods say they're appalled by the claims. Fulham Football Club, which Al-Fayed also owns, says it's trying to establish whether anyone there has been affected. Sir Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves will no longer accept donations to pay for clothes. The Prime Minister has been heavily criticised after it emerged Labour donor Lord Alley paid for clothing for him and his wife. And hundreds of people have been made redundant following the collapse of construction group ISG. The company, which was in the middle of numerous government projects, including work to prisons, has also closed its sites. Administrators say it has been trying to find a buyer but failed to secure a suitable rescue deal. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 98 points at 82.29. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.19. LBC weather, heavy thundery showers in the far south of England, the odd spot of rain in the northeast, lows of 8, further showers across southern England and Wales tomorrow, sunny spells for most elsewhere, a high of 24 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Rachel Johnson.
opportunities. When the news has been about Tupperware going under, TGI Fridays has, I think, closed, and we've got a TGI Fridays underneath us in Leicester Square. And, of course, pagers and walkie-talkies. I think all little kids get a walkie-talkie, don't they, at some point in their childhood, if they're not being given mobile phones age 6, of course. But pagers, I mean, we had to explain what pagers are or were. We don't use pagers now, but of course Hezbollah wanted its membership to be issued with pagers because they were worried about the mobile phone network being infiltrated by Mossad. Well, Israel hasn't acknowledged what happened, but as we saw back to back on 2 days, booby traps of those devices killed 37, I think, including one child, 3,000 or so injured. Yoav Gallant, the defence minister, describes it as a new phase. He says it offers opportunities, but also very risky opportunities. I mean, he says, he hasn't really spelled out what he means by that. So I think the question is Israel really sensible? Is this appropriate? Is this legitimate to open up a new front in Lebanon? What do you think about its audacious, cunning plan to detonate devices in the pockets of Hezbollah operatives, which was, I think, a striking success this week now? Can Israel really fight its ground war, another ground war on yet another front, this time in the north? It has to, in a way, because 60,000 Israelis have been displaced. It needs to secure the northern states of Israel, that northern region, Kiryat Shmona, all those places that Hezbollah has been firing its rockets into the past 11 months. But my worry is not just the northern front going to get too hot, is the entire region going to get too hot? The US and the UK are desperately calling for a ceasefire, just as this seems to be heating up. And Israel is taking on Hezbollah when it has taken on Hamas. I think it's saying that one regiment remains in Gaza. So do you think that peace is further away than ever in this tit-for-tat? Do you think reprisals are inevitable from Yemen, Iran, Iraq, Syria? Do you think Israel's done the right thing by seemingly opening up this new front in the war? The first direct engagement with Lebanon since around 2006. The top Hezbollah commander, called Ibrahim Akil, sanctioned by the Americans for his alleged role in the 1983 bombing of the US embassy in Beirut, which killed 63 people, was apparently killed tonight in Beirut suburb, along with 11 others. So just while the US and the UK are calling really bootlessly for a ceasefire, Israel seems to be going at it hammer and tongs with its neighbours. Is this defensive, reactive, proactive, or simply rash? 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850 and you can tweet at LBC. No, you can text at LBC. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, we want to go to Beirut because this is where rockets have been sent from and to and fro. As we saw, as I mentioned, the top Hezbollah commander was killed in a suburb there tonight. This is where the Hezbollah operatives, this is where their mobile devices, their pagers and their walkie-talkies exploded during the week, killing dozens, wounding thousands. Let's go to Charles Glass, who I think couldn't really be better placed to talk about this new development, this new stage in Israel versus its neighbours. He's a journalist and author, former chief Middle East correspondent for ABC News, who was famously kidnapped, I think, by Hezbollah, although they never acknowledged their role in his kidnapped, taken hostage for, I think, 62 days in Lebanon in 1987. He's written many books, all of them are for sale, and the one that details those events is called Tribes with Flags, and he joins me live from Beirut this evening. Charlie, welcome to LBC. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening. I'm incredibly grateful.
too deep into Israel. Israel hitting the south up to a limit of about 10 kilometers. And this has been going back and forth since October. However, for most Lebanese, the fear was always that it would accelerate, escalate, and that Israel would then keep the promise that some of its more right-wing cabinet ministers said that they would turn Lebanon into Gaza. And that's the fear all along. And the sonic booms today are nothing new. There have been many, many since October. And even 2 hours before the sonic booms, two Israeli jets flew over Beirut, a very low level, making people afraid that they would not bomb. They did. Then they came back, they made the sonic booms, they made the sonic booms during the Israeli speech. I think partly to show that the Israeli speech was recorded before that. He wasn't giving it live, so he wasn't able to comment on the sonic booms. He was able to comment on the murder, killing, assassination of Ibrahim Akil, who was one of his chief commanders. Today, he said that there will be a reprisal for that. Yesterday, he was saying we would take our time, but now there seems to be some greater urgency on the part of Hezbollah to do something in response. Clearly, Israel has been provoking Hezbollah all along to try and get it to do something which may or may not justify a greater Israeli attack on Lebanon.
So when I was in Israel earlier in the year, we didn't go to the north because it wasn't safe. But I was told by the people I was with that Lebanon, there was this red line. They didn't fire rockets too deep beyond that northern border. There was an understanding that that would not take place, that communities within a certain buffer zone, beyond that buffer zone would be safe. Do you think now that all bets are off and all red lines will be crossed? In terms of...
When your brother is welcome, Paul Schipper was assassinated a month ago, the fear was that Hezbollah would react by going deeper and further into Israel. It didn't. Whether it does again this time, I don't know. It's really all that Hezbollah knows back is on a all-out conflagration that will bring in the United States, it might involve a war between the United States and Iran, and set the whole region on fire. The Israelis, at least right now, seem to be pushing in that direction because it constantly provokes Hezbollah and others, and Iran, in order to try and get them to do something in response. But they've been remarkably restrained.
Is this a retaliation reprisal for the I don't know whether it was deliberate targeting of those 12 Druze children who were playing somewhere in the northern territory of Israel?
That was a rocket that hit Masdal Shams, which is the largest city in the world, which is a Druze town. But remember, these are Syrian citizens. The Israelis have not treated them very well since they occupied the area in 1967. Israel has never shown any great concern for aerial rockets. And then suddenly, the outrage that Hezbollah sent rockets. Hezbollah sent many rockets into Iran, but usually onto Israeli military base. This one clearly misfired and killed Syrian citizens. And remember that Hezbollah is an ally of Syria.
They were Israeli citizens, those 12 children who were killed. They were Druze Israeli.
They were in an occupied territory. Some minority among the Druze of the Lebanese have accepted Israeli citizenship because it makes it possible for them to travel. Most did not accept Israeli citizenship. They're still Syrian citizens. And they're still, and legally, in international law, the Golan Heights is occupied territory. But the Israelis who killing lots of Arabs in Gaza are suddenly outraged that Hezbollah killed some Arabs. It's hypocritical at the extreme.
Okay. You're in Beirut now. I mean, I don't know where you are. I'm sure that it wouldn't mean a huge amount to me if you told me, Charlie. But how is the day-to-day being affected by that booby trapping of all those devices that didn't just explode in sterile conditions? They exploded in supermarkets, in the street, in markets, at funerals. How does it feel going about day to day in Beirut now?
On the first day, when the pages went off, people were very frightened. The streets suddenly were deserted. There were ambulances going everywhere. Some of the pages went off in hospitals because doctors, some of them might be party members of Hezbollah, had pages that went off. People were very afraid. The next day, all the schools closed, the universities closed. But the day after, the next day, when more devices, not pagers, but other things went off at Hezbollah funerals, and even some solar panels were somehow rigged to go off. People were more and more afraid. But now this is the third day, and life is, schools are reopened, and people are living normally again in most of them, not in the border zone in the south, where the Israelis bomb regularly, Hezbollah response, also bombs regularly on the other side, and not in the Bekaa Valley, where Israel has hit Hezbollah again and again, but in most of Beirut, the north of Lebanon, people live as they've always lived, but always afraid of an escalation that could send everything up in smoke.
And what's your read of the whole situation? Why do you think? I mean, I read somewhere this could have been planned for 15 years, this operation. You know, the insemination of these devices with ball bearings and explosive material, the way they were rigged, the way they were distributed, the way, you know, there must have been an inside job, would have been years in planning. So why now? And what's the intent of that operation, do you think?
Well, first of all, clearly it's a breakdown in Hezbollah's security network. They failed completely to protect their members. They failed to check those pages when they came in. They failed to do due diligence on the company that supplied it. And they look very weak. I mean, for years are almost impregnable. As well, there's a problem with security of Lebanon. And I think it's worth remembering the history of Israeli assassinations. There's an excellent book by an Israeli journalist, former Israeli soldier called Ronald Berkman, called Rise and Kill First. It's the history of Zionist assassinations, which goes back to the very founding of the Zionist movement in the 1880s. And when their first victims were Jewish people who were opposed to the Zionist project, including a man called Jacob Daham in Jerusalem, who was against the idea of a Jewish state and thought Jews should just live as equal citizens in the Ottoman Empire, and he was assassinated. And this went on and then was formalized when the state came into being with the organization called Mossad, which is intelligence and operations. And they have assassinated people regularly since the state came into being. And this is a prolongation of that. So the fact that they've perfected it and done so well with it isn't surprising, because they've been working at it forever. I really recommend Bergman's book. He now is writing for the New York Times, is doing some great reporting about Gaza.
Charlie, everything you say, kind of the weight of your analysis is that this is all Israel's fault. You know, Israel's been the aggressor, Israel's the Zionist assassin. To what extent is Hezbollah responsible for what's happened? To what extent do you think you yourself were actually kidnapped by Hezbollah? To what extent has Hezbollah, which is a proscribed terrorist organization, to what extent did they invite this response?
Hassan Nasrallah, when the thing began in Gaza, gave his first speech and said that Hamas had not holding it in advance, which meant that he was trying to distance himself somewhat from it, but still trying to look as the only person in the Middle East who was doing anything on behalf of the Palestinians in Gaza. So when he decided to do that, he was putting Lebanon at risk. It was clearly anything that he does, any rocket he sends into Israel, will invite a response. I mean, right now, the border area in South Lebanon, as in northern Israel, is uninhabited. And that's a consequence of his decision to be the champion of the people of Gaza. The whole Arab world is ignoring the Palestinians. It's not doing nothing for them. And he, at the behest of the Iranians, decided to take another course.
Okay. Charlie, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you get back to your evening in Beirut. That was Charlie Glass, journalist and author, former chief Middle East correspondent for ABC, who was actually held hostage in Lebanon by Hezbollah, it is thought, back in 1987. Let's get to calls on that. To what extent has Israel overstepped by this operation against Hezbollah in Lebanon? Can it really afford to fight Hezbollah as well as Hamas when Israel is not hasn't finished the job in Gaza. Can it really afford to open another front with Hezbollah, which is like, who was it who said that Hezbollah's the Champions League, whereas Hamas is the Premier League, and this is, Israel may be biting off more than it can chew. 0345 6060 973. What do you think about the use of those booby trap devices? Was it a declaration of war against Lebanon as well as against Hamas? You're listening to me, Rachel Johnson, on LBC. It's 7:20.
This is LBC.
As a nation, we're a generous lot. You could say giving is in our blood. And right now, we need all of you giving types with O negative blood type. O negative blood is universal and can be given to anyone, making it vital in emergency blood transfusions. So, if you're an O negative blood type, please book an appointment. It takes an hour to save up to 3 lives. If you're the given type, please book an appointment at blood.co.uk today.
Morning. Sign here for your parcel, please.
Thanks. Fancy a cuppa?
I'm fine, actually.
Sure. We've just had a gorgeous kitchen fitted, midnight blue cupboards, an instant boiling water tap. It won't take long.
From first homes to forever homes, Wix create kitchens you can be really proud of. There are options to suit every budget, with kitchens from under £3,000. Use the Wix free design service and our experts will guide you through the choices. Book your kitchen design appointment today. Feel house proud with Wix. Landlords struggling with void periods, rent arrears, evictions and ever-growing compliance? Then talk to Elliott Lee, the hassle-free guaranteed rent specialists. For over 20 years, Elliott Lee have been giving landlords across London peace of mind, offering 1 to 5 year guaranteed rent contracts